Welcome in, I'm Artris, and in this video we're going to be going over a leader from OP05, Purple Luffy, that gets a little bit of a revamp from Starter Deck 18 that's coming out very shortly at the time of this recording. Now, Purple Luffy is a leader that, if you're keeping up with the 08 meta at all, has seen a little bit of resurgence. It does have a pretty strong answer to Lucci, which has been dominating a lot lately, and the main reason for that is Magellan. However, in this build, which you'll see, we are running a little bit of a different build here based off of the starter decks. However, before we get into the deck list, let's go over the leader really quick. It is an activate main once per turn. You may take the top card of your life to your hand. If the amount of the Dawn on your field is 3 or more, add up to 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active. So this will allow you to draw a card at the sake of taking a life, and you're also able to ramp up from there. So you're able to play your bodies a lot quicker than your opponent would be able to play theirs. So it reads, activate main once per turn. You may take the top card from your life cards and put it in your hand. If the amount of Dawn on your field is 0 or 3 or more, add up to 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active. So this does a couple of things for you. 1, it ramps so you're able to play bodies faster. 2, it draws cards for you from your life, so kind of like the Whitebeard effect where you are taking life, but you're getting a bigger hand size overall, so you can defend yourself from subsequent attacks thereon after. Overall, it's a very strong, generically good ability. Before we get into the deck list and talk about what changes we make with the Starter Deck 18, please make sure to drop a like and a sub. It helps out the channel immensely. Additionally, if you'd like to talk about the One Piece card game outside of the YouTube comments, make sure to join the Discord. The link is in the description below. So starting off, I'm bumping up Mr. 2 Bond Clay from EB01 to a 4 of. I think that this card is pretty strong, especially going second. It's an on-play, add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and set it as active. And then when attacking, choose up to one of your opponent's characters. This character has the same base power as the chosen character for this turn, so this can mimic anything on the field for 1 turn. Of course, on the flip side, when it does come to defending it, it's really hard to do so. You just kind of get that 1 attack in and then go. This is really good going second, especially if you are about to take a big hit from a leader, such as Doflamingo, for instance, swinging 7. You usually don't want to drop 2 cards off the bat to stay healthy, so you are okay taking that first hit and dropping a Mr. 2 Bond Clay, and it's the same thing as using your leader ability. Obviously, not the same thing per se, but it is very similar without having to worry about taking a life and then, you know, playing a card thereafter. I'm running 4 Eustace Captain Kidd, and the reason why I'm running 4 here is because we do have a couple of searchers, and it is a strong blocker. I will say that overall, this is probably one of the cards you could look to cut later on, but I think for the sake of this deck list, I think it makes sense because there are quite a few minusing effects, and you can really take advantage of this. If you're unfamiliar, it says when a Dawn card from your field is returned to your Dawn deck, you add 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and set it as active. So basically anything where you're minusing 1 Dawn, or even more than that, you are able to return 1 Dawn, and basically whatever you paid is 1 less overall. I'm running 1 of the 10 cost Luffy, the one that says Dawn -10. Place all your characters other than this character at the bottom of your deck in any order. Then after this turn, take another turn, and then activate main once per turn, pay 1 Dawn, add 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck, and set it as active. This is mostly a finisher. You usually will never play this outright unless you're truly desperate, but I think that this is one where you can get down to 1 life for your opponent, and then the following turn, do a bunch of swings that you have with the board established, and then play this out to close out the game from there. I wouldn't run more than 1 though, and this is searchable, so if you do need it, you can search it off of the event that we are running. Running 4 Sanji, the 2K counter and also blocker. This is while you have 2 or more fewer Dawn cards than your opponent in your hand, this card costs 3 less. Most of the time, you're not going to be at a lower Dawn count than your opponent. There are some times where maybe you play Kaido, 9 cost Kaido, or the 10 cost Luffy that we just talked about, but overall, this card is going to be mostly used as a 2K counter, and it is searchable, which is very nice. The card that I really think makes this deck strong is the 9 cost Linlin from OP08. This is an on-play Dawn -1, trash 1 card from your hand, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life, then place one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 6 or less to the top or bottom of its owner's life face up. This is really strong against Black Yellow Luffy. It's pretty good at mitigating the board, especially against Doffy, although I will say the Doffy matchup is pretty horrendous right now in OP08, mostly because the additional defensive units that you get, or defensive package that you get in OP09 just isn't available quite yet, so I will say that Doffy is a little bit of a struggle for the time being, but this does help quell some of that, the attacks coming in towards you from Doflamingo. I'm running it at 4 because I really like this card, and I think that Luffy being able to just heal up from some of the life that he takes is very beneficial to this leader, so it synergizes really well with what you're trying to do. I see some people running less, and you can run less if you'd like, but I think 4 for me feels like a good spot for this card to be at. Then I'm running 2 of the 9-cost Kaido, which is an on-play Don -5. KO up to one of your characters the cost of 6 or less. This character gains Rush for this turn. I like this card a lot, and this used to be the primo boss monster of the deck. I've reduced it down to 2 because I am running more of the 9-cost Linlin, and also if you do play this, it's hard to play something bigger afterwards. Usually what you're going to do when you Don -5 after this is try to go for game with it. You can also establish a blocker afterwards, the turn after, because you have enough Don to do so with all the blockers we have in the deck. I think that this card is situational. It's not always great, but it is a pretty strong card overall, and it's hard to exclude it from the deck, so I think that's why I kept it in, especially at 2. Next, I'm running 4 Queen. I really like this card as well. I see some lists just not running it all together, but this is a blocker from the dawn of time for this game that says on play, Don -1, draw 2 cards, and trash 1 card from your hand. Card draw is extremely important with this leader. I have to admit that I'm not a huge fan of playing Purple Luffy, and I think the reason why is because the hand that you get is the hand you're dealt, and it's really hard to dig for some of the things that you may need, other than taking your life, of course, and then just hoping to draw into it. But Queen helps get you a little bit further to some of the pieces that make sense for you in those turns that you need those pieces. Queen really helps out. Next, I'm running 4 of the Blocker Law. This is a Don -1 on play. If your opponent has 7 or more cards in hand, you may trash 2 cards from their hand. I have 4 of these because this is a good going first play. If you swing first and your opponent takes a hit, you can play this law down and rip 2 cards from their hand because at that point they'll be at 7. This is always a threat for your opponent, so usually when you do that first swing, your opponent will likely counter out, and you do have this just as, backup in case they don't. And if they do counter out and you have no other 4-cost to play, you can just play this down and have it as a blocker, which is pretty nice as well. I'm running 1 7-drop Kid from the starter deck 10. This is an on-play when attacking Don -1 up to one of your leader gains plus 1,000 power until the start of your next turn. I find this useful in some scenarios. The reason why I have this in here is because we have a new card called Luffy Taro, which comes out in starter deck 18, and you run 4 of that, but sometimes you don't find a 7-cost, and this is an additional 7-cost to be able to play in case you can't find your Luffy Taro. Another card from starter deck 18 that I think is really important to the deck overall is Usohachi. It's a 2k counter, 3 cost, 3,000 power, and it says on play if you have 8 or more Dawn, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So this rests pretty much any blocker in the game. Most blockers are 5 or less, and so you can use this to go for game by resting a blocker, especially if your opponent has one that is imperviable to dying to KO, so like if there's a Borsalino, you can rest this down with Usohachi. If you have Sabos on the field, like against a Black Yellow Luffy, and they are protected from KOing effects, then Usohachi gets past that. This is a better Sheep's Horn, so you can replace the Sheep's Horn that you were running in the deck with Usohachi. Running 2 Onami, I think that I'm testing this card out to see how it goes overall. I'm not sure how I like it. It's very situational. It's a blocker that is a 4-cost blocker, 2,000 power body, very weak overall, but its effect is on play if you have 8 or more Dawn on your field, trash 1 card from your hand, then draw 2 cards. So a reverse Queen, an additional way to draw further into the deck, and you can play this out with Luffy Taro, which we'll get to in a second, but make sure you're on 8 Dawn when you do it. Next, I'm running 4 Sangoro. This is one of my favorite cards to come from the starter deck 18. This is a when attacking once per turn, if you have 8 or more Dawn, draw 1 card. Very simple. You should always, usually, I'll say always, but usually swing with this first, just so you can get further information on what to do for the turn. It's simple. You don't have to really invest any Dawn on it against usually any leader. If you're going against Newgate, if you're going against Red Purple Luffy, you can just swing without having to put anything on this, which is very nice. And you can cheat it out with Luffy Taro, which once again we'll get to in a second. That is the star of the show, Luffy Taro overall, and it's one of the last cards in the deck list to talk about, but we'll get to that in a second. But Sangoro really puts in a lot of work. It's great in the mirror. It definitely allows you to counter out more liberally because you can get those cards back with Sangor. Next, we're running 4 Zorojuro, another new addition from starter deck 18. This is an on-play. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 purple Straw Hat crew type card and put it in your hand. Then place the rest of the cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you're going first, which you're going to want to do with this deck, this is your optimal going second turn. This is your optimal turn 2 play, being able to swing 5 with leader, probably fish out a card because they're scared of the 4-cost blocker law, and then you use your leader ability, so you're at 3 Dawn, use leader ability to go up to 4 Dawn, and then you play this out and then search out, hopefully, Luffy Taro, which Luffy Taro is a 7-cost, 8,000 power body from Starter Deck 18, a new card. This is on play, Dawn -1. Play up to 1 purple Straw Hat Crew type character card with a cost of 5 or less from your hand. So this will search out Luffy Taro so that the next turn when you go up to 6 Dawn on turn 3, you can use your leader ability again, go up to 7, play the Luffy Taro out, and then hopefully be able to play another Zoro Juro, a Sangoro. You can also play out Onami if you so choose. There are limited options. In this deck list, at least, there's limited options. Once you go into OP09, and even now, you could probably add some more things in, like a blocker Jinbei, but I think deck space is a little awkward right now. There's a weird like transition period between like 8 and 9 as far as the meta goes with what we're trying to put into the deck. You could look to run, you know, Polys, you could look to run Magellans in place of here, because like we're in a weird spot where like the deck before didn't really have the Straw Hat Crew or Purple Straw Hat Crew synergy, and now it does with the Starter Deck 18, but then there's also cards that feel like you should run them, like Magellan or Poly. For the sake of this video, I'm not running those, but those are some good additions you might want to look into adding into the deck again. But overall, we're trying to go with the more consistent package overall with the Straw Hat Crew. Then I'm running 2 Gum Gum Jet Gatlings, a 0-cost event. Basically just pitch a card from hand and then plus 3,000 power. If it's a trigger, you get to ramp a Dawn and set it as active. So it's pretty good. You might want to bump this up because there are some bricks in the hand, but overall, you're not too worried about counter power because you do have quite a lot. But this event is searchable both through the Zoro Juro, because I believe it's just a card, not a character, and then also through this other event. When you're at sea, you fight pirates, 1-cost event that says look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Straw Hat Crew, Kid Pirates, or Heart Pirates type card and add it to your hand, then place the rest of the cards at the bottom of your deck in any order, and the triggers activate this card's main effect. This is the reason why we're running so many kids, so many laws, and then obviously all of the Straw Hat Crew in purple. Because with this, if you are able to open up with this card, you can find pretty much everything in the deck except for Mr. 2 Bond Clay, except for the 9-cost Lin Lin, and then of course the 9-cost Kaido. Also the Queen, just to add that in. But everything else should be searchable overall. Even this 10-cost Luffy is searchable off of when you're at sea, you fight pirates. You might want to even look to bump this up more, but I think in the next set in OP09, you would just replace it altogether with the Searcher Law, which we'll get to when we get to OP09, when this deck becomes probably tier 1. But right now, it's in a little bit of a weird spot because I think Doflamingo just like runs over it at this point in time, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm playing it wrong, but I think that's just how it goes, because Doflamingo feels like Zoro against this deck, but even worse, where the bodies that are coming out are just like no Dawn investment, just swing hard. You're constantly asking your opponent, me, to take cards out of hand to stay alive. So it's kind of rough, but that's obviously a deck that you're going to be facing a lot of in the meta going forward. But I think against other decks, you do have a pretty fair shot just because of the curve. Basically, playing either 11 or 12 Dawn worth of value on your turn 3 with the Luffy Taro, and then being able to draw cards with Sangoro and stay healthy with the blockers and the 2Ks and everything else in between. I think this deck is pretty solid. I wouldn't say it's a great deck overall, and there's definitely some room for improvement. It's not really my play style, but I think that it does have a place in the meta to be able to do well overall. So let's take it into the sim and see how it does. All right, we're going to go against the Mirror here. It looks like they're going to get to choose. Hopefully they give us first, but they don't. They take first, of course. Smart opponent, but I think that this hand is pretty keepable because we do have a lot of 5 costs, although it feels like the action's not really there. We kind of have to play a little bit of a defense game, it seems like, based off of just having a couple of kids and Queen in the hand. I'm not sure exactly what I'd like to establish just yet. I'm thinking probably Kid because, well, it makes sense to be able to get that Dawn back later. Although Sangoro is a pretty good, you know, character to throw out. But seeing that we drew into the Luffy Taro, I think it makes more sense to just hold on to the Sangoro and cheat it out with the Luffy Taro and end up playing out the 5-cost Kid. Yeah, because then next turn, when we do play the 7-cost Luffy Taro, we get the ability -1, we get the Dawn back from Kid, and then we can cheat out a Sangoro. And I'm okay dropping some cards here, mostly because I'm going to get it back with the Sangoro. But as you can see, the opponent has the perfect purple curve overall. They have Zoro Juro into Luffy Taro into Sangoro. We have a very similar curve. Obviously, we don't have the Zoro Juro, but we do have a Kid blocker here. So we're going to swing 7 into 6. They're likely going to let this, or not let this go. They'll probably counter out because they have a lot of cards in hand, and it makes sense for them to keep this alive. We're just going to get the 2k out of hand and then pass the turn. I don't feel like swinging the kid blocker quite yet. I do think that I'm in a little bit of trouble right now based off of their board size, and that I also don't have that many cards in hand after, you know, going second. I've had to play a little bit more defensive, but it looks like they put their foot on the brake a little bit by playing out this queen. If they had played something a little bit more aggressive, we might be in some trouble here, but overall, not trying to take too much damage. We're just trying to stay as healthy as possible here and see what we can get away with. Yeah, we're in some trouble. We are in some trouble. Down to 1 life, and we have a 3 board to their 4. We could play the Kaido this turn and start picking apart their board. I'm not sure exactly what I want to do, so I'm going to swing first with the Sangoro and just see what kind of options I can get with that extra card draw. Maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. In this case, not super important overall, but we can at least start just picking apart their board. I'm going to go after the Zorojuro because I think that it's more likely that they'll let this go. Mostly because like it's not something I would protect too hard. I'd protect the Sangoro more so than anything else, but we are able to play down the Kaido, pop the queen, and then go straight at the Sangoro itself. And now we have cleared the board, turned the tide. We just have to stay alive as best as possible because they do have 2 big swings coming our way, and we could go down to 0 very easily. And if we go down to 0, they also have probably Usohachi to be able to rest our blocker down. Here, once again, they're playing another blocker, and we are able to at least feel comfortable. They're probably just going to go 8-8 if I were to do that. I might have, you know, not done this the right way, but I think I just wanted to stay at 1 no matter what, so that I don't have to worry about an Usohachi coming from them. So let's go ahead and just swing 8 into 8, get a card out of hand. We're trying to reduce their resources down. It's a resource battle. Yeah, they did have the Usohachi overall. If we can keep a Sangoro on the field, then our resource battle, you know, starts going back into our favor overall. This is probably an easy block for them. Wow, they just let it go. Okay, I probably would have just kept it alive, blocking with the Sanji. Yeah, Sanji. Saying Sangoro and then Sanji is just kind of a weird. Anyway, we're playing the queen down just to stay as healthy as possible, and we're kind of trying to. Well, never mind. I was gonna say we're just trying to stay alive, but they are, you know, going really hard here. I think we just counter out because they could potentially lethal us here if we're not careful. Swinging 7 with the Sanji blocker. Swinging 5 into lead, we can counter out of this. And then if I were them, I would probably just, you know, either swing face, I guess, but I would probably just clear the board because they can't clear the game or finish the game at that point in time. We are at, looks like, I want to say we are at 9 Dawn, so we might actually be able to play our 10 cost here and go for game by using our leader ability to take that last life and ramp up 1. So we're going to swing first and just see where we can get them to. They're down to 0, and now we're able to play the 10 cost and close out the game from here because now there's no way that they can survive a couple of hits coming their way. So yeah, overall, this is how you have to do it. You have to make sure a Sangoro sticks in the mirror and then hope for the best. They are running the polys, which I think is probably a good choice overall, especially against Doflamingo. I'm not running any, and that's probably a problem there, but yeah, try to keep your Sangoro alive and then just a resource battle in the mirror. Going against Rebecca, this is a matchup that if you allow them to stabilize, it's going to be very hard. But because Rebecca does not attack, you should be okay for the most part. You can feel comfortable, you know, taking a pretty early lead and being aggressive and pushing them down to a lower life total. I'd say that Magellan definitely is great against this matchup. We're not running it though, and this is one of the reasons why in the intro I talked about, you know, Magellan might be good, Poly might be good. They have different reasons to use them against control decks that are using KO abilities like Rebecca, like Lucci. Magellan's great against decks that spit out a bunch of bodies. Poly's great. But once again, we're trying to figure out how good this Straw Hat Purple, you know, starter deck 18 thing is overall. So they are running an Orlumbus, which they get it down, and unfortunately we don't have an answer to it. Orlumbus is one of those cards that this will allow them to start taking away the game a little bit, and I'm a little bit worried, not gonna lie. So we just have to try to do as much damage as possible. We're gonna play the Law down, rip some cards from hand, and then swing another 7. So they do take that 7, going up to 7 in hand. Great for us. Now we have a defensive unit, and we can swing another 7, asking either from 2 out of their hand or take a life, and they likely will take a life because Rebecca doesn't really want to drop 2 cards a turn. per attack. They want to be able to drop 1 card a turn or per attack and then be able to use their leader ability to gain those cards back. But if they're dropping 2, they go like 2, 2 every 7 on the 7 attacks, then, you know, it's really hard for them to recover their hand size as easily as they would if you were to just swing like a 5 or 6 here and there. So overall, we're in a strong position. Of course, the Orlumbus was able to survive a turn, and they're likely going to be able to play out a Kairos, which they do, KO the Law. I'm not sure if I would have KO'd the Law or if I would have KO'd the Zorojuro instead, just because like Law is 5k attack, Zorojuro is a 6k attack, so it's easier for them to counter out of the Law overall. They don't have stage down, so they wouldn't have been able to attack into the Zorojuro anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think it probably would have been smart just to get rid of the Zorojuro instead, although it's just like a minor thing, not really huge at the end of the day. They got rid of a body, which is ultimately their goal here. Swinging 5 is not necessarily the best move here for me, but I'm trying to get a couple cards out of hand, which looks like they will give me 2 cards out of hand. And then now we're going to ramp up to play the 9-cost Linlin, heal 1, pitch this 4-cost counterless card out of my hand, and get the Orlumbus off the board, which is exactly what I'd like to do. Now, typically, you're going to see people get rid of the Kairos because it is un-KOable, or for the most part, you can't KO it. The ability says if this card would be KO'd, you can rest your leader instead, or rest a core at a Coliseum. They don't have the Coliseum out on the field, so it would just be a simple rest of the leader. And so cards like that you want to bottom deck, or you want to like get off the field in ways like put them in life. But I will say that Orlumbus is more of a threat overall, whereas Kairos is just like a little bit of a gnat, you know, swinging at you every turn. It's like not that big of an issue, whereas Orlumbus being able to just answer the board with its ability, you know, -4 to anything on the field really hurts. So we're going to protect this the best we can. We need to keep our units alive. Now we draw into another Linlin. And by the way, the reason why I didn't play the Kaido the previous turn and play the Linlin instead is because Kaido will minus your Dawn so much that you can't play the Linlin the next turn. So being able to just establish the Linlin first and then Kaido if we want to do that is better overall. I'm going to swing 5, just test the waters. They're probably going to block it here, I would imagine. If they don't, then I'm free to swing, you know, elsewhere, like or higher with the Zorojuro or the 9-cost. If they block, I could swing into it, or I could just pressure face, and I think I just want to pressure face because I want to make them drop 2Ks overall. And then they dropped to 2K, so because they're not going down in life total, let's go ahead and get Sabo off the board, because the less things that they have on the board, the less of a threat we feel, just because the leader can't attack. So we're going to attack into the Sabo, we're going to put the Kairos, which I was just talking about, put that into the life, and we're in a pretty good spot. 4 life. Obviously, the later the game goes on, the worse position we're in, but I'd say right now we're looking pretty good. The Luffy coming down is not really scary because they don't have the Coliseum, which gives it pseudo rush. Oh, well, I spoke too soon. They were able to draw into it, but they don't swing with it quite yet, which I guess that's fair because it's not really going to be a guaranteed, you know, swing into any of these abilities. It can attack active characters, by the way. So they could have attacked the 9-cost, but that wouldn't have been good enough because, well, they didn't have enough Dawn to swing into 9. They could have attacked the Zorojuro, but then they'd have to, you know, restand it, -7 cards from their trash to restand it, and then be able to not really use the ability as well the next turn. You know, that's also a possibility. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to just swing into their life and get some cards out of hand with the 4-cost Law, which hurts them a lot. We're going to go 9, 7, 9. They're down to 1 life and a Dream here with a full board on our side. And we're keeping the Kaido as just a closer in case they do play any blockers, because at this point in the game, they really do have to play blockers or else they are in a lot of trouble. They have to play like a Rebecca Sabo. And of course, the Kaido is not going to be able to KO anything at that point because Kaido is a Dawn -5 and then KO something that's 6 or less. So the Moria coming out, not really scary because that means we can pop the Rebecca pretty easily with the Kaido and just go for game overall. Of course, the downside here is that our board is full. So with the board being full, that means that we have to probably block something so that we can make room for Kaido. Otherwise, we could just swing with everything the next turn as well, which that's a possibility. But I imagine that they're probably going to load the rest of the Dawn up on Luffy and probably swing Luffy into the Queen or the Zorojuro. We'll see what they do. Either way, we have 2 blockers to protect whatever we need to. But yeah, I think that they played... This is the problem with Rebecca. It does sometimes fall way too far behind if you can't establish your pieces correctly. And especially like decks like purple decks where they can ramp up. It's harder for control decks to take care of decks that ramp up because some of the high cost characters that come out, they don't have the tools for at that point in time. So Rebecca, unfortunately, they did see, you know, Orlumbus, which is great for them. They saw it on curve and they saw the Kairos, but they just they just weren't able to keep up with the 9 cost Linlin. I think that's probably the main reason why that this game hadn't been as close as it could have been. So yeah, they load up on Luffy. Like I said, they're probably going to swing into like the Zorojuro, the Queen. We have lots of blockers. We also don't have to play the Kaido next turn, but I want to play it for style points. We're going to block the first attack because who knows, you know, I don't want to give them too much information with the cards in hand quite yet. So if they go 9 again, then we can counter out twice. We could play the Usohachi, but like I said, I want to do style points here. So let's go ahead and play the 9 cost Kaido. Yeah, let's play it. Minus and then KO the Rebecca. Let's use our leader ability to gain another Dawn. They decide to just wrap it up at that point because they can't counter out of everything that we're going to have coming their way. Overall, this is how you have to do it. You have to put the foot on the gas as much as possible against control decks, especially Rebecca or Lucci. And if you can do that and ramp up to some big bodies, it's going to be hard for them to come back. All right, we're going to go against Doflamingo here, and I think that this is a matchup you're going to see a lot of for probably the next year if I had to guess. Although, like I said in the intro, it does get better in OP09. You do get, I think it's like Gavel, like the 1 cost event that, you know, goes +4, pitch a card from hand, draw 2 more cards. That is really crucial for this matchup, being able to stay healthy and defend out of a lot of these attacks. Pretty important. But this hand is not great, and they're also going first. So this is, unfortunately, you know, sometimes you have to deal with this and just hope for the best. They will be swinging 7 straight up just to see probably a blind rip off the top. Oh, they just decided to swing 5. I think that I'm going to counter out of this one because if I can counter out of it right now, I should do so. I don't want to drop the Sangoro because I think Sangoro will help me gain that card advantage back. So let's just drop a 2K. I'm okay dropping it. I do want to kind of keep my options open for my next turn play. Now, I could play the Bond Clay. I could play the Zorojuro. I'm kind of just on the fence of what I want to play here overall. I'm thinking maybe Zorojuro could be better overall because you do get the search. I could also just, you know, use my leader ability and get the Sangoro on the field and start drawing cards. But it is risky, obviously, taking some life against Doflamingo. We're able to get the 9 cost, which that is one of our saving graces if we're able to feel comfortable enough to drop it down. Unfortunately, this next turn is going to be really awkward for us. We might be able to drop 2 bodies overall. We could also maybe get the Law blocker online if they are greedy enough to have 7 cards in hand. So using the Doflamingo blocker to stack the top of their deck the previous turn, they're getting out a Jinbei. The Jinbei brings out the Hancock. Hancock is going to probably put the Dawn under the blocker Doflamingo. And they're probably going to go 7-7, which this is really uncomfortable for us. 7 is really, really not what you want to see coming at your face. That's phrasing, obviously. But yeah, 7 is really tough for us to counter out of, especially if it's multiple 7s a turn. This next turn's really, once again, kind of strange because we don't really want to use our leader ability because we're down to 3 life already. So let's use the Bond Clay, swing 5 into 4. We're just having to play board control the best as possible as like we can. Unfortunately, though, it's not going to be easy here. Obviously, they're going to be able to block the first one, and I might have made a little bit of a mistake here swinging the 6 into 5. I could have probably just swung 6 into 4 and then more than likely guaranteed the blocker Doflamingo to go down. Not that it's like super much of a threat here, but it's just getting bodies off the board. Obviously, a 2K counter is easier for them to get rid of when I'm swinging into the Jinbei, and I had to swing 5 into the Doflamingo, of course, because I wanted to be able to play out the Bond Clay and the Onami. I just wanted to fix my hand and then establish a blocker here, but we're playing very defensive because that's kind of how you have to play against Doflamingo if you're going second. It's not really comfortable overall. Now, this is a spot where I could defend this by just blocking with the Onami, but then they're likely going to start swinging everything back into the Sangoro, and I don't really want to lose too many cards out of hand here, especially when I want to try to keep a healthy hand size, plus also play like the 9-cost Linlin this next turn. We don't have any 2Ks in hand, which is really awkward for us, so we're going to have to block that Hancock swing. So let's go ahead and just counter out with a 1K here. I don't find that we're going to be able to play out the Sangoro as easily going forward, especially it's really awkward if you're unable to do it past, you know, your on-curve point of that, you know, 7-cost Luffy Taro into Sangoro. Now here, I'm going to swing 5 into 5. I don't expect this to go down. Usually, they're going to protect their bodies the best they can. So let's go ahead and just swing 8 into 5. They're going to block it, of course. And I think I wanted to play down. I didn't use my Dawn efficiently because I was kind of like deciding what to do here. But I played down a Luffy Taro to play out the Zorojuro because I feel like more bodies on board would be better than healing and having a big body. Because the more bodies on board that I have, the more that I can contest their board. We're kind of like in a weird, well, I'm like in a weird spot where I have to try to contest their board every turn, but then I'm not really making any progress because they have so many cards in hand and they're able to just reestablish very easily. If I were them, I would just swing face and ignore everything, you know, just apply as much pressure as possible here. Really awkward though, because they're swinging 6 and I don't have any 2Ks, which the deck has so many 2Ks and unfortunately we just didn't draw into those. Now they go 7. That we can go ahead and use the 0-cost event, pitching a Kaido, because I feel like staying alive with the Linlin is a little bit more important than KOing something guaranteed and then going minus Dawn the following turn. So they're swinging 5 here. We can counter out of this and let's see what they have. 8 Dawn remaining. This next attack will be very telling. Yeah, it looks like they're probably going to play Gravity Blade and get rid of my 2 4 costs. And now I have 1 body on the board, and they have a whole slew of characters, which, unfortunate for us, we're not going to be able to protect ourselves too well. So let's go 6 into 5. They counter 8 into 5. Of course, that goes down. We can heal 1 here, pitch a card from hand, and then get rid of one of the Hancocks. But they're at 5 life. We're in, like I said, a really rough spot here where this is just kind of how Doflamingo goes. They spit out so many bodies, they swing for uncomfortable numbers, and kind of have to hope for the best here. So 6 I have to take. They swing 7. I'm going to counter out of this one and get rid of the only other counter I have in hand, because I feel like if they can't really go for game here, maybe we can survive by like getting rid of some bodies, healing back up, and then, you know, wishing for the best here. So ideally for them, they might want to just go after the Luffy Taro, knowing that I have 1 card in hand. But yeah, like I said, really rough spot. It's not really comfortable to be able to, you know, have to deal with all these bodies. Going first is definitely preferred in this matchup. And if you can go first and establish a Luffy Taro and keep it on the board, you're probably in a good spot. So yeah, like I said, they're going after the Luffy Taro. Makes sense to, you know, keep their board as clear as possible. We go 6 into 5. Do they have another 2K? They do. Oh, they don't. They have 2 1Ks. They get rid of it. They protect it, and then they block it here. Yeah. I think this is probably game, just because like they have so many bodies, and we don't have any cards in life, or sorry, cards in hand. Our cards are in life. It's an easy math win from there. You go 5, 7, and then put the rest on. Yeah, this is kind of just like how the matchup sometimes goes. Unfortunately, it's an uphill battle. You want to go first. If you go second, you're kind of just like in a rough spot. But yeah, going against Marco, this is probably a matchup I feel like we're going to see a little bit more of going into the 8.5 meta, because they do get the 7-cost Newgate. And so I think it's worth seeing how, you know, Purple Luffy does against Marco. I feel like they probably have somewhat of an equivalent strength. Purple Luffy probably like edging out a little bit more as far as like the overall power of the deck goes. Of course, though, if Marco gets to the, which they always get to the late game, but once they get to the late game and they see like a Sanji, and they can do like the Sanji into like Newgate, Sanji into Rayleigh, whatever it may be, then we're going to be, you know, having some problems. But let's test out and see how it goes. We're going 5 into 5 just to get a card out of hand. And then, you know, that's one of those where it's like, are you going to take this or not? If they take it, then I could play a Law if I had it. So it's just safer to counter out there. But I don't, so I play the Zorojuro, and I get a search off, which is very nice. Our hand's looking pretty good here. We have a pretty good curve. Unfortunately, though, we have to take this. I'm not going to counter out of a 9K attack. We do have to use our leader ability, which means we're going to go down to 2 health. I'm not too worried, though, because we do have the 9-cost Linlin to be able to heal back up and feel pretty comfortable overall. So let's go 5. Let's go 6. They take the 6. They counter out of the 5, as to be expected. Now we can play down the Sangoro off of the Luffy Taro. And our hand size is pretty good. The one thing we have to be worried about here, though, is Marco runs pudding. And our hand looks very much puddingable. Like I said in the last video, is that even a word? Who knows? But it is for now. We'll coin phrase that or whatever it is. So that is going to be a leader ability on the Zorojuro more than likely. And they'll be able to take it out. I'm not going to defend it. The Zorojuro is all theirs. The following turn, what we can do is go swing Sangoro first, see what we get off of the Sangoro ability, and then swing 5 with Luffy, swing 8 with Luffy Taro, and probably play a big body out. You know what? I lied. I'm going to protect it. The reason I'm going to protect it is because I don't want to get puddinged. And so that was like a de-incentivization for them to pudding me, but then they just bounce it back to hand with Atmos. So I guess, I mean, they won that trade there overall, but we are able to draw a little bit more here, which is fine. We'll go 6, see what we get. We'll go 5, likely counter out of this one as well. If I were them, who knows? Maybe they want some cards. But knowing that an 8K body's coming their way, they'll probably just counter out of the smaller stuff. And we can play a Lin here. We're fine taking the life, going and then putting the Atmos back into life or into life itself. So that's fine. We're good here. We have a bigger board and we have a, you know, pretty nice amount of attacks coming their way. Even though this next turn, they could probably get rid of a Luffy Taro. They are on... Oh, no, they can't, right? They're drawing 2 Dawn. They're going to be on 8 Dawn. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they play here. Maybe they have the 7-cost Newgate. Yeah, looks like they do. A good way to get rid of the Sangoro, of course. So yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to use the Newgate ability to tap their Newgate and KO a 5,000 power body or less. They just swing 7 to 4, and I'm okay with that because I am not going to protect it. Otherwise, the Newgate gets an ability off, and I think that's probably what they wanted because they didn't really want to rest their Newgate because that leaves it open to being attacked by the Lin, and I don't think they really want to have to worry about protecting it. We'll go 6, 8, 9, and now we're going to play Kaido and just pop their Izo and then go 10 at lead, hopefully putting them to 0. So we had a very explosive turn where we swung with some pretty good numbers, and now we're in a comfortable spot here. We have 2 Uso Hachis, actually 3, and if they play any blockers down, which they're going to have to. They have to play blockers down or likely lose. If they decide to go for game with like a rusher, we have the counter that we need to be able to survive. If they decide to block her up, we have the Uso Hachi, the blocker, the 2K counter, the counter to survive. Just rest to 5 costs. So we could just go double Uso Hachi if they play 2 blockers out. Who knows? Let's see what they do first, though. It's probably a very tough spot for them to be in right now, considering, you know, they're at 0 life. And this is one of the things that, like, Luffy does really well. Just putting that pressure in, having an annoying board that's, like, really difficult for the opponent to have to deal with. So, yeah, looks like we're probably going to be able to close this out. Fingers crossed. We'll see what they do, though. Using the leader ability to put a card to the bottom doesn't really matter at this point because, you know, they probably have a pretty stacked hand. If I were them, I'd probably put the -2 on the Luffy Taro. Yep. Swing 8 into 6. And then probably swing leader into it as well, just to try to get cards out of hand. I don't think they're going to go for game here. I don't really think that that's possible. I mean, it's possible, but... They're not getting it. So 8 into 6, that's fine. We can use a 0-cost event and pitch a Zorojuro. And that doesn't really give too much information to them. It might signal that I don't have counter, which I do have counter. I just want to hold on to my Uso Hachis just in case they decide to throw some blockers down. So now, what do they have available with 9 Dawn? Who knows? Who knows what they have? They could... Oh, they're going 8 into 6, so they have a 4 and a 3. This could be like a Marco blocker. And maybe a Doffy blocker. Yeah, Doffy blocker to see the top. We were able to pitch out a 2 and a 1, and now we have 2 Uso Hachis to rest both of these blockers down. Let's go ahead and just play them down because we're at 7 Dawn. We use our leader ability to go up to 8, so the effect takes place, and then we can just rest both blockers and then swing 12 into 5, and that's game. Purple Luffy seems to be in a pretty strong spot right now. I am not 100% sure if I like this build, just to be honest. Gotta be honest to you guys, I don't know if I like this build 100%. I feel like adding some Magellans in might help. I feel like adding in some polys might help. Just depends on what you feel is going to be very prevalent in your locals. If you're playing at a bigger tournament, of course, maybe just a generic approach could work. But I feel like overall this is like in the right direction. It definitely leans more towards what you'll see in OP09 without having some of the good stuff from OP09. Like OP09 runs the 7-cost Sanji, runs the 1-cost counter event, and then of course the Law Searchers for more consistency overall. And it could also run the 9-cost Luffy if you want to as well, but in this build, we are running a fair amount of, boss monsters with a 9-cost Linlin, 9-cost Kaido, 10-cost Luffy. This 10-cost Luffy is just kind of like, I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's nice to have when you do, need it in a pinch, but this could be another card overall. But yeah, I'd say Magellan, maybe Poly, could be a couple things you look to add back into the deck or keep in the deck right now. Because like I said, Luffy just does really well against Lucci if it can get multiple bodies out and also a Magellan out as well. That's like really annoying. And then Doffy's kind of just like a hard match anyway, so maybe having something that can answer the board like a Poly would be good. So yeah, I'd say consider those things when building this, but overall, Luffy's not in a bad spot. It's not in a great spot either. It's like kind of in between. I'd probably put it like maybe a high tier 2 deck, you could probably take it to a bigger tournament and probably do okay. I think some consistency pieces might be needed to add back into the deck. Like you could probably add more 1-cost events as well to be able to find the pieces that you need more often. I'll say this though, to close out the video. The one thing that I don't like about Purple Luffy, and the reason why I don't really like to play it as much, like as a personal deck, is that sometimes the pieces that you get in your hand are just kind of what you're stuck with. And so, you might be on your 10-don turn and looking for a very powerful play, and all you can do is play Blocker Kid into Queen. And that kind of doesn't feel great because you're not really establishing a great amount of power or high-cost characters. And sometimes those are easier to just KO and get rid of. So yeah, I'd say that at times this deck feels amazing, and at times it feels awful. So for me, I feel like it's just kind of like in between. But overall, the starter decks, I would say, make it a much more consistent and stronger deck with the ability to be able to cheat 2 bodies out on your turn 3. And bodies that are really hard to answer too. So, and being able to draw cards, who doesn't love to draw cards? So yeah, Purple Luffy, I would look to play it if you, aren't quite sure on what to play. You don't want to play Lucci, you don't want to play Doffy. Maybe play Purple Luffy. It could be a deck for you. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching as always. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next video.